So we are picking up Emeretz Hashem on Samach Beis Amud Aleph 62a, and we are picking up Emeretz Hashem right towards the middle of the daf. Amar Rabbi Tamchun Bar Chani Loi, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines down into the wide lines. So Amar Rabbi Tamchun Bar Chani Loi, Kol Tzonu Beis HaKisin Eitzam Shlosh Devarim. Whoever is tzanua, exhibits tznius, is modest in the bathroom, is saved from three things: min ha'nachashim, min ha'akrabim, min ha'mazigin. V'yesh omrim af chalomosav miyushavin alov. So he's saved from three things: from snakes, from scorpions, from azikin, from shadim. Now, those first three, those are things that were commonly found in the Beis HaKisei. And others say that even his dreams, right? Even his dreams ultimately, again, come true. So Rashi points out over here that, what's the connection between dreams and the bathrooms? It's really the connection between dreams and shadim. That sometimes shadim can have a negative effect on someone's dreams. So like this, if one is sanua in the bathroom, the shadim don't impact him, which won't only help him in the bathroom, but also help him with his dreams. This is incredible. So there was a particular bathroom in Tveria that was so overrun by shadim that even if two people came in together, they would be at risk. Now remember again, generally shadim only attack people when they're on their own, don't attack groups. But this bathroom was so dangerous that even individuals would get attacked. Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, Habu Aili Bey, Chad Luchudei V'lo Misiki. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi went in by themselves. Each one by themselves, and they didn't suffer any adverse consequence. So they said like this. So Rabbi Aaron and Rabbi Asi responded, they said, no, we're not worried. Why not? Because we have a Kabbalah, right? We have a tradition. What's the Kabbalah? That the Kabbalah the Beis HaKisei tzniusa shtikusa. That the way to conduct oneself in the bathroom is modesty and silence. Not to talk, not to engage in conversation, to be modest. And therefore they felt that because they exhibited these behaviors, therefore they would be saved from any type of harmful experiences in the bathroom itself. Kabbalah di Yisuri shtikusa Yomi-Berachos. This is actually very profound. They say we have a Kabbalah about our teachers. How do you deal with suffering? Shtikusa, silence, and to ask Hashem for mercy. This is really a very profound idea as well. That how does a yid deal with suffering? Shtikusa, a certain level of acceptance, resignation, but not resignation like a giving up hope, an acceptance and a resignation that these are the circumstances that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to have, Yomi-Berachos, but at the same time daven for compassion. So, it's interesting because at first glance that might even sound like a little bit contradictory. On one hand, if you're accepting, that means then why would you daven for rachamim? But there's this beautiful dialectic. I accept what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does with all of my heart, but at the same time, I could also daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to better and to improve my circumstances as well. Really beautiful. So the Gemara goes right there. Abaye, marbio la'ime, imra l'meo bahadi l'beis HaKisei. This is very interesting. So Abaye's mother had raised the sheep. She gave him a sheep, and the sheep would follow him into the bathroom. So the idea over here is, because apparently shadim only attack if a person is alone. So she went ahead and she raised the sheep that would follow him into the bathroom. This way he would never be alone. But why a sheep? Why not do a goat? So the Gemara says, so apparently there are some shadim that look like goats. So one could confuse an actual goat with the shade that looks like a goat. So the Gemara says as follows. So this is actually interesting. So Rava, before he became the Rosh Yeshiva, so his wife, who was the daughter of Rav Chisda, would go ahead and put a walnut, right? Would put a walnut in like a copper bowl, and when he was using the bathroom, she would rattle it to make noise. So apparently, again, this would scare the shadim out of the bathroom. So she would be, Rashi points out over here, she would be outside of the bathroom. She'd be outside of the bathroom, but from outside of the bathroom, she would go and make this noise to scare off the shadim. Basar de Malach, after he became a Rosh Yeshiva, this is interesting. So after he became Rosh Yeshiva, what she did was that, so apparently the outhouse, the bathroom, was right outside their home. So she made a window from the house into the bathroom, and she would put her hand on her husband's head while he was relieving himself. The idea of putting her hand on his head represented that he wasn't alone. Now, what's the pshat? So why in other words, before he was a Rosh Yeshiva, she would go out and make noise with the walnut in the copper bowl. So, and after he became Rosh Yeshiva, she put her hand on his head. The idea being that the greater a person is, the more susceptible they are to the destructive powers of Shadim, which makes sense. In other words, right, the greater you are, the more susceptible you are to danger. So therefore, again, she needed to protect him even more after he became the Rosh Yeshiva. Incredible. Amr Ula, Achore Ageder Nifne Miyad, Ubebika Kozman Shemis Atesh Ve'ein Chavero Shomea. So interestingly enough, so now the Gemara is talking about the halachas of tznius when it comes to relieving oneself. So if a person is behind the wall, right, so you could go ahead and relieve yourself right there. You don't have to move anywhere. In other words, you're out of sight, you could go ahead and do that. But bika means like an open area, an open field. So the halacha is you have to distance yourself, far enough away from other people that if you pass gas, if you flatulate, they can't hear you. They can't hear, okay? Isi bar nasan masni hachi, achore hagadar, kozman shemis ate shein chaver shmei. Others have a different version of this. Even if you're behind the wall, you have to distance yourself enough so that if a person flatulates, no one else will hear him. Ubebika kozman shein chaver ro'ehu. In an open area, as long as your friend doesn't see you, that is enough. I asks the Gemara, Meisvei, Yosei Pesach Beis Haba Benif and Lachori Haggadah Bein Torin. I said the Gemara says also, okay, so this is a little bit of a different discussion. This is talking about someone who is guarding an olive press. So now remember, he's guarding it because he wants to make sure that nothing tamei comes in contact with the olives. So what happens? So the halacha is he's able to leave the olive press and he goes right behind the wall, and he's able to go ahead and relieve himself there. In other words, so that halacha l'maisa, again, we see that all he needs to do is go right behind the wall, and that's enough. Now, again, the idea over here is, and if he does that, the olives are still considered to be tar, because we assume that someone tamei did not come in the interim and touch the olives. So you see over here that going behind the wall is enough. To which Gemara says, no. But taharas akelu. So it's different. This is a case of taharas. This is a case of ritual purity. So therefore, again, Chazal were more makel and allowed you just to go and take care of your needs right behind the wall. But it's possible that normally the halacha would be you have to distance yourself enough that even if you're behind the wall, no one would hear you. No one would hear a person flatulate. That's how far they are. Okay, so Tashma, kami yerchaklu v'yitohorin. So how much? So now the Gemara asks, for the person who's guarding, how far can he distance himself from the olives and they still maintain their tar status? They sheiro ehu. Close enough, ultimately again, close enough that they're able to see him. Close, the guard is close enough that he could see someone who might be trying to enter. To which the Gemara says, Shani ochli taras dakila burabanon. So again, remember, so those who eat taras, so Chazal were a little bit more makel on them. Ravashi Amar, my calls man shein chavero the kamar. What does it mean as long as his friend cannot see him? Calls man shein chavero es peruo. So ultimately it doesn't mean that his friend can't see him. It means that his friend can't see him in an unclothed state. But his friend, there's no problem ultimately with his friend being able to see him. Okay, so Gemara tells the story. There was a certain guy who was delivering a eulogy who was in front of Rav Nachman. Amar, so the guy, the eulogizer, said, "Hay tzanua bar chosaf hava." This guy was incredibly tzanua. He was incredibly modest in all of his ways. Amar lo Rav Nachman, at ailis bahadei lebeis hakis v'yadat it tzanua ilo. Tell me, did you ever go to the bathroom with him that you know whether or not he's really tzanua? Desanya ein koren tzanua ela l'misha tzanua beis hakis. It's actually really quite fascinating. The Gemara says, what's the definition of a tzanua? Who is someone who's called a tzanua? Someone who is modest in the bathroom. It's a really fascinating idea if you think about it. That the Gemara is saying that the true, almost like metric of one's modesty is how they conduct themselves in the bathroom. Rav Nachman, my nafkulamine. So this is interesting. So just to contextualize the story. So the guy's giving the eulogy. He says about the deceased that he was very tzanua. Rav Nachman says, "Really? You know that he was tzanua? Tell me, did you ever go to the bathroom with him?" So the Gemara says, "Rav Nachman, my nafkulamine. What does Rav Nachman care? Let the eulogizer say whatever he wants. Why is Rav Nachman butting into this? Mishum desanya kishem shenefram min amesin kach nefram min hasabdonu min haonin acharehen." So this is incredible. So the Gemara says, so the same way, when false praise is given at a levaya, so the dead are held accountable for that false praise, which is really fascinating. In other words, so if I maspid someone's maspid me, and they say things that aren't true, they exaggerate this. Well, the truth is, it's a different discussion. The halacha is you're allowed to exaggerate a little bit when it comes to eulogies, because again, the assumption is that had a person lived longer, had a person had more money, had a person had more time, they would have done even more good. So you're allowed to we'll call it exaggerate or amplify a little bit. But the issue just is when you get into things that are just untrue, that's where it becomes a problem. So the Gemara says the same way that there is culpability for the dead when they are eulogized inappropriately, so too again HaKadosh Baruch Hu collects punishment from the Satanim, from the eulogizers who lie, and from those who go ahead and say Amen after the eulogies. So therefore, Rav Nachman felt that he really needed to say something in order to save this eulogizer from any harm. Who is a person who is mad? This is a person ultimately, again, who relieves himself, right, at night in the same place where he does by day. The idea, well, now, what does that mean? So the idea is that when a person relieves themselves by day, as we've already established, they have to distance themselves a good amount so that they can't be, either they can't be heard passing gas or they can't be seen. So at night, no one else is around. So you might have thought that Allah Chalamaisa, you can go ahead and be a little bit closer. So who's someone who is tsunua? Someone is someone who distances himself at night the same way that he distances himself at day. We're going to stop over here for today. We'll pick up Amir Hashem with this piece in tomorrow's shir, and shkoyach everyone.